Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the showdown between the Dwarves led by Belgar Ironhammer and the Dark Elves who are going to be led by Malekith the Witch King. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So in this game, I really wanted to have a multi-layered strategy. As such, in the front line, you can see I do have mostly miners with blasting charges, and they actually are vanguarded. So I think my main battle line was like right up here. Yeah, I think Belgar Ironhammer was right at the front of the deployment zone. But regardless, miners with blasting charges pretty good against standard Dark Elf infantry. If they have like bleak swords or dread spears or just low armored troops, the blasting charges can be a ton of damage, and against more elite troops like Harganeth Executioners and I guess Blackheart Corsairs, but you don't see them too much here. They're gonna like stagger them, do a little bit of damage, but at least the miners do have some armor piercing damage. So if you have to send them in against the Harganeth Executioners, they'll probably take off like 10 to 15% of their HP, but that's not bad for how cheap they are. So in the front line, entire blasting charge core. In the secondary line, we have a couple groups of Bugman's Rangers. So one here and one on the other side, and I just like them because by dwarf standards, they're fast for a dwarf. They are relatively mobile. They regenerate. They're pretty independent against like harpies and dark riders, and I just like having a mobile firing station that isn't really going to be obstructed by line of sight like a group of thunders would be. So we have two Bugman's Rangers right here, and they do have the stock, of course. On the far side, as far as leadership goes, we do have a Runesmith with the Rune of Negation, Wrath and Ruin. And for our Lord, I wanted to try out Belgar Ironhammer. He's very tough to snipe out. 60 melee attack, 55 melee defense. He has charge defense against all, and he does also have the Revenge Incarnate, which is a really cool ability. But I feel like they should give it like one or two more charges. I don't know, give him like 2 charges out of it or something. Because sometimes like what often happens is an enemy lord, like Malekith on a dragon, for example, or on someone on horseback will come into fight, and you're like, yeah, let's pop it, and just get angry, and then they just run away, and you're just like sad. So it'd be nice if you had like a couple chances, even if they like halved the stats, 22 melee attack, like 10 leadership, whatever, and just give it a couple charges. I think that would be a little bit more impactful over the course of a long game. But regardless, Belgar Ironhammer ready to party. In the secondary line, we have Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. So just going very, very wide this game, seeing if we can overwhelm the Dark Elves with our numbers and attrition. Dwarf Warriors have okay stats. They have high melee defense for a great open unit. 30 weapon strength is certainly not bad, and hopefully they will do the trick. In the back, we have 2 Bolt Throwers. The Bolt Throwers are going to be shooting at Malekith the entire game, going after any other large threats. We have 2 groups of Slayers guarding them. So we have Slayers here and the Dragonback Slayers down here on the low ground. You can see my opponent actually does have some Coldwind Dread Knights up in the hills. So those Slayers definitely have their work cut out for them. And in the middle, we do have an organ gun, but I didn't really know the details of this map, and it turned out it was a pretty horrible map for an organ gun, but we'll see how it does. For my opponent, Coldwind Dread Knights up in the hills. So those guys are going to be pretty scary if they're able to get on my Dwarf Warriors or Miners, but if I can get them on them with like Slayers or other troops like that, we should be okay. 2 Harpies to harass the back line. Malekith with the Blade Storm, Chill Wind, Power of Darkness, Soul Stealer. So definitely a pretty powerful kit. And Malekith on a dragon is pretty tough. I mean, he could definitely outduel Belgar, I would imagine. Well, I don't know if the Revenge Incarnate popped, but Malekith's HP pool is a little bit bigger, and of course he has much heavier AP, so that's pretty scary. Front line, Bleak Swords over here, 4 Dark Shards, actually only 3 Dark Shards, and it looks like he does have a couple of groups of Harganeth Executioners. So a pretty well-rounded Dark Elf army, definitely going to be pretty tough to take down. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So noticing my opponent did set up down here, which was a little bit interesting. I'm like, I assumed they would set up on the high ground and just engage me straight on, but it did catch me off guard a little bit. He's going to actually have to march up this like crevasse here, and it's going to be a little bit tricky for him. But the Harpies and the Dragons are coming in here. I do have the Bugman's Rangers kind of watching them, and you can see these Bugmans are going to start shooting in here. The first organ gun is going to be teeing off right here on these Bleak Swords, as they were the only unit in range. And here come the blasting charges from the Dawi, and I don't know, it seemed like it kind of worked. So there we go. There's the blasting charges right in the face of these filthy Dark Elves. And it should do some pretty solid damage, although it looks like a lot of them did overthrow a little bit. Definitely not the most accurate group, but check that out. Really solid damage. And the Bugman's Rangers and the organ guns are going to be providing some overwatch. And I was pretty happy about this situation. My opponent was advancing up the hill, so I was able to just send one group of miners to just kind of distract all these guys while I was able to get overwatch and some other good stuff going on. But these miners are definitely going to be the sacrificial lambs, as there are like 3 Dark Shards just kind of pounding into them. So that's a little bit tough. On the far side, the Dread Knights coming around. You can also see the Harpies kind of swooping up and over the hill. The Bolt Thrower has done some pretty decent HP damage to that Harpy. Malekith looks like he's just looking for the opportunity to strike here, but unfortunately, I only have 2 Slayers to protect 3 pieces of artillery. I like to have like 1-to-1. I probably should have gotten like just put some Dwarf Warriors or Miners back there to help out. But you can see these Miners right here do take quite a bit of damage from the Dark Shards, but they're kind of like holding my opponent back and forcing him to advance up the hill. And the organ gun fire is just doing a ton of damage and tearing these guys to shreds. Well, a lot of his army is kind of stuck on this one group of miners. So the miners here do get broken off by the Bleak Swords and the missile fire, and they will have to retreat. In the meantime, Belagard was leading a contingent of miners to fight against these Bleak Swords, but a very good breath attack from Malekith was able to break those guys. So now Belagard is a little bit isolated, which I'm nervous about, but the Bolt Thrower fire from the Dawi Bolt Throwers is going to be supporting their king and kind of staggering him and doing a little bit of HP damage. In the meantime, Bugman's Rangers still shooting down into the Bleak Swords, and I do have an auxiliary group of Dwarf Warriors coming down, so they're going to collide. And the Dwarf Warriors probably have too much armor for these guys to handle. They should be completely fine with their 85 armor here, so... On top of that, the Bleak Swords are going to be advancing on the other side of the hill, but unfortunately for them, they are going to be taking some blasting charges to the face. King Belegar is also in the front line, but he is going to be getting attacked by Malekith, and it's going to be a tough one. He does have that expert charge defense, although I do not know if he was braced. I did pop the, I believe, the Oathstone. Doesn't look like I actually popped it there, and you can see that Belegar is going to just be laying face down here as Malekith and his dragon just kind of give him the business, which is a little bit unfortunate. So hopefully he will stand up here in just a moment, start fighting back. So I do pop the Revenge Incarnate. That's going to put his weapon strength up to 595, his melee attack up over 100, so at the very least he can give it back to Malekith a little bit if he doesn't keep getting staggered, but he also has a little bit of trouble catching Malekith, which is a little bit annoying. So let's see if he gets an attack here. Come on, Belegar. I believe. So he comes in with the Dawi Karate Kick, but it looks like the 100 melee attack was not enough to hit Malekith there, and yeah, he's gonna keep struggling a little bit. In the meantime, I do have to send in my second line of forces because the Dark Elves are getting a little bit danger close to my position. The Bugman's Rangers are just shooting at the Hargoneth Executioners, which isn't going to do the most damage since I don't have a ton of AP there, but, you know, ultimately I just need to start whittling those guys down. But the Dwarf Warriors, you know, with the downhill charge are going to be holding this position relatively effectively, but a very good Blade Storm. I remember this from my opponent. So I had a bunch of, like, Slayers fighting those Harpies, and I think, was that the, no, that must have been the second Blade Storm. I know he does it, like, a couple times in this game, but yeah, that one still did some okay damage to these Dragonback Slayers, did some HP damage. They were ultimately able to rescue that organ gun. So right now I'm falling back with the organ gun. In the bolt throwers, you can see just so annoying, this map. I had to advance a little bit. I just had them targeting Malekith, and they lost line of sight, so they had to advance when he landed. But you can see that they're going to be shooting some nice Overwatch here into Malekith, who is at about 2,800 HP, give or take, so definitely a pretty prime target to potentially finish off. On the far side, the Cold One Dread Knights are rampaging, so they did run into my Bugman's Rangers, which they're going to do pretty good against. But Bugman's Rangers have a whopping, I think, 38 melee defense, so they're going to be pretty strong with the support of the Runesmith, and you can see the Miners and Dwarf Warriors and other relatively low-tier Dwarf Infantry should be able to drag down these filthy Dread Knights. So let's hope for the best here. So if we take a look at the battlefield here, pretty close. The balance of power is pretty much dead in the center. A little bit in my favor, perhaps, but I have about 550 to my opponent's 445, so very, very close battle. And like I said, I only have those two groups of Slayers protecting those artillery pieces, so I made a huge mistake. I pulled these Slayers forward to try and like chase Malekith as he was going after Belegar, but that opened up my organ gun to some Harpies, who did rally. So I thought I'd finish them off, but they came back and finished off my organ gun, so that was a huge loss. In the meantime, Malekith is using his mobility to kind of stick and move. You can see he routes some Dwarf Warriors right there, and there are a couple Miners fighting here. But for the most part, Malekith is just doing a ton of damage, and now that he's able to shut down my organ gun, which I was shooting at Malekith, you know, he's going to be in a little bit better shape, and he just does a huge Matrix move right there and dodges that bolt thrower. And on the low ground, there's a group of 68 Dark Shards. Kind of an odd number. Like, how did they decide, let's put 68 models in this group of Dark Shards? But getting some decent fire here on the Slayers, but I'm trying to do my best to keep this thing online. And you can see, unfortunately, these Hargoneth Executioners are coming in. So these Slayers are going to go fulfill their oaths into the Dragon Breath and the Gaze of Malice, but they're going to go in there and do their best fighting these Hargoneth Executioners, which is a very, very uphill battle for them. But still, they have pretty good melee attack, so they can put a dent in them, but for the most part, these Slayers, you know, don't have enough AP to really get through those guys. Both are continuing to shoot at Malekith, which is nice, so buying some time in that respect. This group of Dragonback Slayers, realizing that their artillery piece they were protecting is pretty much offline, are going to be pushing up, and I'll probably be going after some Dark Shards, I would imagine, with that. But you can see Malekith is able to shut down the second bolt thrower, so the layers of the onion are coming unpeeled as the forces of the Dark Elves do advance, but I do have a lot of rallying Dawi, and you can see that Belegar Ironhammer and the Runesmith are doing a pretty good job holding these forces in place, as Bugman's Rangers do provide some Overwatch, and Miners and Dwarf Warriors are going to be rallying to their king. It's like that scene in The Hobbit, rally to the king, and you can see that all the Miners and Dwarf Warriors are going to just grind and get a rear charge there. And of course I do have the mighty Oathstone, which is going to give a lot of melee defense to these relatively low tier troops, but there's the Blade Storm I was talking about, coming in there just wrecking my Dwarf Warriors and Miners, but they are standing firm through the leadership of their king here, as the Hargoneth Executioners actually start to get shaken and pretty beat up. I know Belegar has some pretty cool custom animations, but I doubt he has any with these guys. But man, he's all about those dwarf kicks. So Malekith with a very lackluster breath attack right there, and he did use the Power of Darkness on himself, which is a very, very bold strategy, Cotton. And he also does use the Gaze Malice on my infantry, so he's been really on point with those Blade Storms as well as the Gazes this game. But Belegar and the Runesmith are kind of holding firm, and I decided to pull Belegar back and recharge him in when the Rune of Negation is up, and just allowing the Bugman's Rangers to just kind of waste away, and they actually like do an okay job. I think their AP is like, what is it, like 4 or something? Let's go ahead and take a look. So yeah, it's only 4, but it still adds up, and they're just so decent in melee that I really like them as kind of a dual purpose unit. So the Harpies and the Dark Elves are going to be swooping in and attacking my my Rangers here, but they're going to turn and fight, and they're going to be healing. And Harpies are pretty good against Bugman's Rangers because they have really high damage. Just, oh man, her head is like spazzing all over the place. That's kind of some disturbing stuff. But the Bugman's Rangers, again, have high melee defense, and they do regenerate, so hopefully they'll be able to survive. And the other Rangers are going to rush to the aid of their brethren here, and they'll get some karate kicks and dwarf shield bashes, and hopefully it'll be enough to send these Harpies fleeing back to the hills. So the bounce bar has shifted a little bit. Now it's pretty much dead even, maybe a tiny bit in my opponent's favor because Belegar is very beat up, but so is Malekith. Malekith probably has about, less than 1,000 HP. He's shaken, and this has turned out to be a very, very close battle. Over here, I was able to chase down the Dark Shards, so we had a couple healthy groups of Dark Shards. You can see these angry Dragonback Slayers are coming in here to satisfy the grudge, and they're able to just grudge in all over those guys. And are there any left? I was like, how many? I was about to tell you guys, like, there must be like 10 Dark Shards left. Like, nope, there are just straight up none left. They're going to kind of run back up the hill here, and you can see that Malekith is basically just picking off the scraps. So anytime you're in a very close game like this, it's always a pretty good idea just to pick off the scraps and make sure you get the goodies. But there are 21 Harganeth Executioners. Over here, there's pretty much a full health group of Dark Shards. That was a little bit unfortunate, but you can see the Bugman's Rangers are going to be chasing with 55 models, and they're waving their axes and shields in there, but it looks like I do get kind of caught up in those Harganeth Executioners, which is unfortunate. And then the Dark Shards are going to turn and shoot, which is... I think I was microing something else. I was like trying to keep Belegar alive over here, but I definitely should have just kept force pathing after the Dark Shards here, because those, even like a small group of like 19 Harganeth, can do some really good damage to Bugman's Rangers with their anti-infantry bonus. In the meantime, Belegar's kind of being tethered a little bit. He's being attacked by, it looks like 4 Harganeth Executioners, so hopefully he can finish these guys off. It looks like he does decapitate 2 of those guys with 1 blow, and the last guy, he's not going to let him go easily. He's gonna slap him as well, but... Basically, I was just watching Malekith. I was like, when is the dragon coming? I know there's going to be a time when the king is going to have to make a last stand with his 400 HP, but when is it going to be? This was something that was giving me a lot of confidence. The balance is very even. Yes, Malekith is alive, but I still have 53 Dragonback Slayers. So these guys are basically just the Terminators. And, if Malekith wants... I don't know if Malekith can beat these guys, because they have the slow ability, so if Malekith, tries to cycle charge, he's going to get dragged down, take additional damage, and it is not going to be fun for him. So right now, Belegar and the boys are just kind of in the last fight here. You can see Belegar gets hit down to 190 HP, fighting against his last Cold One Dread Knight. So just great leadership, but he is not a match for the Dawi King. Although Malekith, might have something to say about that. We're going to find out here in a second. And I did use the Rune of Negation there just to kind of keep him, as healthy as can be. But I probably should have saved that for any potential Malekith attacks. But I guess Malekith's attacks hit so hard that, that 22% wouldn't matter. So, my Dragonback Slayers were able to clean up those Harganeth Executioners, and now they're on the hunt of those Dark Shards on the low ground. Malekith's coming in, and the Dwarf King is going to fall before the might of the Black Dragon, as is his Runesmith here. So pretty much all of my forces here are just going to buckle. Of course, Malekith coming in with that huge charge bonus of 50 there. Well, I guess it's not terribly huge, but it comes in, and he's able to take out the King, as well as the Runesmith. And now it is up to the proud Slayers of I wonder if it's like Dragonback Slayers. I wonder if they're like from an area. They're probably just from Slayer Keep. But they're going to charge in here, go after these Dark Shards. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit because I know it's a little Benny Hill action. But the Dark Shard's definitely going to get caught and just cut to pieces. So yeah, they're just going to get massacred by the Dragonback Slayers, who are just beasts. And then the Bugman's Rangers also follow up on the high ground. I do have some Miners and Dwarf Warriors who are able to rally. And you can see Malekith thinking about striking, and he does land. So I attack him with the Warriors and actually do quite a bit of HP damage because, they all have AP. And here comes the last stand of these proud Dawi warriors as they're going to charge down and fight the vastly superior Harganeth Executioners. But they're going to give it their all and hopefully do some damage. And honestly, without stand your ground, these Harganeth might have been broken on the charge because you can see they were sitting at like 19. Then Malekith comes in and is undoubtedly just going to terrify and rout these Dwarf Warriors and Miners. So now the final battle is upon us. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and their Bugman's Rangers are going to be taking on these Harganeth Executioners. So here we go. It's the charge of charges. And they're leaping in. They got their axes up. The Rangers are flying in as well. And they should be able to take these guys out. Just a very, very close fight. An ancestral grudge match to millions of years in the making. Well, probably not millions, maybe thousands of years. I don't really know kind of the time span of the Warhammer universe terribly well. But yeah, anyways, the Slayers and the Bugman's Rangers in here doing a pretty good job cleaning up these Harganeth Executioners. Then the Witch King realizes he has to come in here while he still has some support. And now he has no troops left on the ground, so if he just sits in the air, he is going to take perpetual leadership penalties. You can see the Great Black Dragon is going to be fighting amongst these trees right here. And yeah, I think he's just probably going to get dragged down at this point. So Malekith is shaken, -1 leadership. The Dragonback Slayers just leaping in and slicing the dragon with their axes on the way down. You can see that Seraphon as it is at about 350 HP. And that is going to be all she wrote. So the Dawi were able to pull that one out. That was an incredibly close game. It was definitely pretty fun using Belegar Ironhammer. Granted, I still don't think he's probably the best choice there, but He does have a silver shield against like Dark Shard Fire, and on top of that, he is surprisingly resilient. So I guess if you're worried about getting like Lord sniped, and he's not that expensive. I think I paid like 15 or 1600 for him, which is just a little bit more than a standard Dwarf Lord. So there's some give and take there. Miners did a really good job in the front line, of course, splitting up my opponent's forces. The Dwarf Warriors were also just really paid for themselves. 38, 28, 22, not bad against the infantry quality of my opponent. I mean, if you can take out, 22, 30 models from a Harganeth Executioner, you're doing something right if you're like a low-tier Dwarf Warrior. Slayers did carry their weight. The Bugman's Rangers, as you saw, were able to fight effectively in melee and provide overwatch. And even though they didn't get a ton of like raw unit kills against the Harganeth, they did do a ton of HP damage. And the Organ Gun was great in the beginning, but my sloppy play opened it up for my opponent. And the Bolt Throwers actually did really good at dragging down Malekith. Like if I didn't have those, he would have been, quite a bit more healthy towards the end of the game. But yeah, very well played my opponent. It was a super fun game. So look forward to facing off against you again, Miguel Addis, 96. I believe that's correct. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that Ancestral Grudge match. And guys, we will be back with more action soon. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.